A very warm welcome to you from Equa Marketing. This presentation is brought to you by Equa.com, a leader in digital marketing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Growing Dentist podcast show. I'm really excited to have Lynne Leggett, who is referred by a dear friend of mine and somebody I have, read up on and learned quite a bit about. Lynne is a working mom. She has two teenage kids. I have two teenage kids. And so welcome, Lynne. Welcome to Growing Dentist.
Well, thank you, Naren. Thank you for the opportunity for us to chat today.
Yeah, so for the audience who don't know you as well, would you mind telling a little bit about yourself, your story and how important being a working mom is? Because I think a lot of people can relate to that, both in dentistry as well, because, I work with a lot of, clients, dads and moms, who have young teen kids. And also then talk about how you got into this business and how you got started. I mean, your coaching, your practice management business, Victory Dental Management.
Sure. I'd be happy to. Well, I tell you though, when anybody asks me what is the reason for you being a business owner, the first thing I'm going to tell them is family, because my family is really the most important thing to me. I don't take motherhood for granted at all. It took my husband and I quite a while to be able to get pregnant with our firstborn, our daughter. And we had to go through in vitro for her, and Nicholas came naturally. And they're 15 months apart to the day, because I really wanted to have twins since I'm a twin. But that didn't work out. So that's okay. I often tell my mom, 2 in diapers, that counts. And she just doesn't agree with me. She said it's not the same. But we are blessed with our daughter and son, and being a working mom, it has its challenges. And we've talked about what it's like from a mom and dad situation to have kids and to be able to take them to places and be the taxi until they can drive. And just recently my daughter has her license, so it's changed a little bit for me. But I think having that boundary and knowing where you want that line to be has been very, very important to me as a business owner. And I actually find that my clients appreciate me telling them, I'm available to you if it really is an emergency, but understand when somebody calls me in the evening, I'm going to say, is this an emergency? Because I know I'm with my family. And if they say yes, then I will stop what I'm doing and I will call them right back and we'll handle whatever the situation may be. But I think it's important to have some alignment with values and where those boundaries are. And you asked me from a working mom standpoint more about how I started my company and got into dentistry.
Absolutely, yeah. Tell us a little bit about why did you get into dentistry and how did you get into it?
I really have a very unique and or weird story getting into dentistry, because I have a best friend who really hounded me for years to get into dentistry. And I kept telling her, I don't want to work for a friend, because I was really worried about risking the relationship, to be honest with you, because we're such good friends. And it was the practice she has with her husband is a general practice. And I just resisted for a really, really long time. And she finally wore me down. And she knew my business background. I had run several businesses in the past in completely different industries. So when I finally said yes to her, the first thing I discussed with them was, you need to realize, yes, this is a general practice, but it is a business. And to be able to look at it from those eyes. And I think as a dentist owner, you're torn in so many different perspectives, because you have that ownership hat that you need to wear as a business owner. And then you have the clinician that has to do all of the clinical work. So it really is a unique situation from that standpoint. But I did find where I could finally use my 5 years of Latin, and that was within the dental world, because every time I turned around and they were explaining the dental, terminology and definitions to me, I already knew from Latin root words where everything was in dentistry. So that made me more comfortable right off the bat, and made my parents really happy too, thinking she finally can use 5 years of Latin. So going into creating Victory Dental Management was something that I really should have done many years before I did. But I had run a successful practice and had really not only done that, but taught the dentist also how to run the practice from a more efficient and profitable standpoint. And sometimes we all can get caught into ruts, but I think having a fresh perspective and looking at things certainly is helpful. I really enjoy working with those dentists that are struggling. Because if you were to ask me, Lynn, what do you do? My response is going to be, I'm a problem solver, ultimately, is really what I do. You know what I mean?
Right. Go ahead.
Okay. So I guess my viewpoint with being within dentistry, when we were talking about me being a working mom and being very close to my kids, I've been blessed in being able to also have some outside of work activities. And I used to play basketball, and I've coached basketball for years now. And being able to be my daughter's basketball coach, and I haven't coached every year she's played. I don't want to be that mom that says I need to coach every single team she's a part of, because I don't believe in that either. But it's been a wonderful thing to be able to participate with her and be able to be really a basketball coach that, I don't know if all of your listeners are familiar with AAU, but think about it, those players that want to play on the college level for Division I, and the goal is for them to get scholarships to play on the college level. Those are the players that I've more recently been able to be a coach for.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I know the reason, we decided to talk more about it is because, I find also, I run a team of, a company with 200 people. And I think, what I find is that, if you do a great job coaching your team, you don't need to worry about the business. The business takes care of itself. And so I'm really, really fascinated, about coaching a bunch of, girls who are teenagers, so they're not easy to be led. They're kind of figuring themselves out and, have all kinds of things happening in their life. And so kind of motivating them and inspiring them to play at that high level, not just as individuals, but as a team, as, people who depend on each other, people who trust each other. That's probably a fascinating experience. And I know even in your practice, your dental management practice, that's kind of something you specialize in. So I would love to start off by asking you, tell me, what did you notice about great teams? What are some of the things that you feel great teams do that ordinary teams don't do?
Well, I think I'll take a dental instance, because I can always talk about sports and basketball all day long. We can talk hours about that. But from a great team in the dental world, first of all, to me, team means something. I think in dentistry that every dentist wants to say, I have a team working for me. They really want to be able to say that, but I'll tell you 9 times out of 10, they don't, because a team, it's just defined simply as a group of people that come together just to achieve a common goal. But that's not good enough. It's not good enough in a practice, and it's not good enough on a court. Because if you take the great basketball teams that have been out there, they can anticipate. They know the move of their teammate, exactly what they're going to do, what play they're going to run. If they're not going to run that play, they know how to switch and how to anticipate what's going to happen next, because nothing on the basketball court goes exactly according to plan. That sounds a lot like a dental practice, doesn't it? Every day we can have a plan, but it may not go according to how we want that day to go. So it's those individuals that are able to realize the purpose of what they're doing, how are they going to do about it, and how do they adjust, as well as what kind of accountability are they sharing, back and forth, whether they be a dental team or whether it be a basketball team.
Right.
And I know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I know that some of the coaches that I've admired, and I know that a lot of people are not going to like my particular choices that are your listeners, and I understand that, but hear me out for a minute. Don't shut me out yet. From a women's coach standpoint, I absolutely love Pat Summitt with how she led her teams, and she actually was the first college coach ever to reach 1,000 wins. Now, the next coach I'm going to mention is more controversial because I absolutely love Coach K at Duke University on the men's side. What I love about them is their philosophies. And if you talking to them or reading past interviews like I have of both of those incredibly accomplished basketball coaches, they taught their players and put them in a position to win. And how they did that was they were very intentional about what they wanted to accomplish, and they followed a process. And this is that process that I'm talking about is what in the dental field, dentists just aren't taught how to do that. There's so much that they have to do when they're in dental school, right? And part of leadership and part of how do I put a team together? What does that look like? What are the practical things that we need to do? They never go over that. And that's really where I'm able to come in and help them with that, because that's really where it starts.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about, you talked about, anticipating, right? Anticipating the next move, because a lot of times, life and dentistry doesn't go according to plan. You talked about, that common purpose of winning together, and how do you do that, right? Where everybody brings in a different skill set, different backgrounds, different everything. So help me kind of start understanding, again, you know this better than I do. So help me start understanding, how do you go about, and you said everybody talks about, I have a great team, but 9 out of 10 they don't. How do you go about, figuring out where they are and helping them through this process? You take a lead. I'm just, I don't even know what question to start with, but anyway.
Sure. Well, that's, and that problem that you mentioned, that really is the crux of the matter, because I think there are 3 things that a dentist needs to be able to have a true dental team. And the first thing is leadership starts with the dentist owner. In my mind, that they need to be the coach and they need to lead the team. And I know being a coach is a new mindset for dentists. And I find that most dentists, even if they didn't play sports, they can understand from that analogy standpoint what I'm trying to do, so they can connect what it would be like to coach a basketball team or a sports team versus their dental team. So we got to start with that leadership. But then we also need to have every member of the dental team needs to understand their role and responsibility and expectations. And the third thing is all team members need clarity and understand that everyone is accountable not only to the coach, in this case the dentist, but also to the rest of the team. And I think some of the stuff that I'll explain that in a little more detail, but it really isn't fluffy, because this stuff is real. I know that a lot of people think encouragement is all you need to do. And I sort of put that on the fluffy side of things, because that's great and it's needed and that's wonderful. But I'm very realistic, and I want to know, okay, if I hear that, then how do I put that into action? What does that look like? What can I do to make those changes, in a dental practice? So the first thing I would say is mindset really is key. You have to be intentional about what you're trying to do. And some people don't like that key phrase of mindset. So I like to call it just having a choice. We all have a choice to make in how we're going to respond to things. So making that choice from a positive standpoint, that's really what I'm referring to. And then, the dentist, or in this case, also the coach, they have to model the behavior that they want. They have to show their team how they need things to be done. Because it's one thing to say things, but it's quite another to be of action and showing it and being able to do it. You really can't have that disconnect between what you're doing and what you're asking the team to do, because then you lose all credibility. Then what you're trying to build is not going to be built at all. You also need to know your team and their individual personality, so you can really bring the best out in them. And I think that takes time, Naren, and it's an investment that you're making in your team and really ultimately in your practice. And I know a lot of dentists, when I mention this, I'll ask my clients, when was the last time you told somebody thank you on your team? And they just look up in amazement. And when you actually ask that question, they can't remember. So that's one of the things of the broader scope of being a leader is you've got to take the time to actually thank the people that are working for you and with you. The next thing that I mentioned was for every team member to understand their role and responsibility and expectations. But in order to do that, the doctor has to explain their philosophy of why they're even in practice. And I'll tell you a couple questions that I ask my clients to get us thinking about this. They really need to know their mission. Why are they in practice? Why do they do what they do? What are the goals they're trying to accomplish? A lot of I use the phrase fluffy. I've had a client that actually told me, I don't like this. I don't like to talk about this. So then I ask them, right, why? Why do you do what you do? If you had all of the production and collection in the world, what would you do? What's the bigger picture for you? And I've had several that tell me in different workshops that they want to make a certain amount of profit so they're able to do the pro bono work that they want to do. And I think that's wonderful. If that's their goal, I think that's absolutely wonderful. But they need to make a profit to be able to be there for their patients, right? And profit isn't a bad word. And I find that a lot of dentists almost apologize for running a business. And they shouldn't do that because that's the vehicle, the manner in which they're going to be able to help their patients. Or some of the areas that they would have goals would also be, the tasks that we always think about, numbers of referrals, new patients, hygiene department numbers, treatment plan acceptance, those types of things. But the other areas that they need to talk about with their team is what is their core values, their belief system? Answering those types of questions, that's really what's going to guide all of their other decision making for their practice.
Yeah, you bring up exceptional points, and I run a marketing company. I have 200 people, and of course, I don't coach dentists, but I coach my team. So we do not have managers, and this kind of came up, I guess, over the last couple of years more so than before. We have coaches. We have business coaches and personal coaches. And the business coach's job is really simple: help our clients grow the confidence they have in us with the help of our marketing tools, our marketing strategies, and so forth. That's it. Single purpose, that's all they do. So people are not afraid of trying things and taking risks and speaking their mind. Of course, we have tools and best practices, so those are all there to make sure they don't fall and they don't have to figure it out. But at the same time, if something is a dumb idea, people have the freedom to say no or, not do it, right? And same thing, we have a separate personal coach because we believe when people are growing, their output is going to grow and they're going to be happy. Mm-hmm. And another point you mentioned that's really, really rings true to me is we all have a purpose. We all are good at something. So when you make me do something I'm not good at, it becomes work. It becomes painful. But if you help me do something I love and that I'm good at and that's good for the business, now it becomes fun. And when you're having fun, you don't have to be managed. You're just enjoying yourself, right? And, and this is something I have to be honest, I didn't learn till, by making mistakes. We're so busy, we don't take time to smell the roses,
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's our own accomplishments or our teams. So that genuine thank you, it's not like a paycheck or a big thing. It's really that honest, genuine appreciation, where somebody helps somebody be somebody, understand them and help them, and then appreciate them for being who they are. So it's fascinating. I know a lot of dentists who are probably listening to this. These might be new ideas because they're so caught up in the weeds. How many bookings and how many this and how many that, right? I mean, they kind of, miss the, big picture, which comes from the heart. Who am I? Why am I doing this? Yes, of course, we need to make profit, because without profit, the lights, we can't, the lights are not going to turn on, and, things are not going to happen. So we need profit. And it doesn't have to be, oh, I have to apologize for making money. No, you can have it both. You can make a difference, and in the lives of patients, in the life of your team, and make a profit. So I kind of really like, the way you think about this. You're not saying, here is the rule book, memorize it, and you will do great teamwork. You're saying, go back within you and try to figure out, why do you do what you do? What motivates you? Do your people know it? Why do they do what they do? What motivates them, and what are they good at? Am I making sense?
Absolutely. If you saw me, you could see me shaking my head. Yes. Because what you really say in this example is, I think that dentistry is all about relationships. When you really just tear everything aside, it is about relationships. It's about trust. And when you're building a team, you're building, like you said, whether they're coaches, personal coaches or business coaches in your world, you're building a group that they're reflecting on you. They're reflecting on the dentist, because the dentist was the one that hired them. So understanding what makes your people tick. I mean, first of all, I'm going with the assumption that you've hired the right people. That cannot be overstated. You've really got to make sure that you hire correctly for what you're looking for, and not just having a warm body and not feeling the pressure to handle just because you need somebody to do something. But those questions that we just talked about in the beginning, Naren, those are the hard ones sometimes, because dentists don't want to think like that, or they don't want to think like that, or they think it's not important. And when you think about those things for yourself in the business and the practice that you're trying to run, that's going to come through to your patients, because it also comes back to the culture that you're trying to build. I mean, your culture is going to determine what's acceptable or unacceptable in your practice. So your culture is going to dominate not only hiring for your team and how they act among themselves and the dentist, but it's also for the patients. How do you want them to be treated? How do you want them to feel when they enter and leave your practice? That's one thing I talk about a lot with clients is, what's the perception of your patient, when they get there and when they leave? Because I want them to build that trusting relationship. I want them to feel that they're, taken care of and they're loved, and they're in the right place. I think we've really gotten away. It's not all about numbers. It really is. If you treat people right and they value the dentistry that you're doing for them, they're going to be repeat customers. They're not going to go to the cheaper guy down the street that's just worried about production. You've got to set yourself apart and be unique, because depending on where the market is, there's an extreme amount of competition in dentistry. And I find a lot of my clients that are fee for service, they're competing against people, other offices that are accepting all kinds of insurance. So my way of talking to them, and really all of my clients, is let's make sure that the experience of your patient is the best that it can be, because that's what you need to be able to do.
Right. I would like to share some examples, and would like to hear your examples of amazing, teams and amazing dentists. I have a dentist. He works 24 hours a week. He's very passionate about, a certain type of dentistry, biological dentistry. So he teaches other dentists, and he helps them, and he is really into it. And the people he hires are also very passionate about it. And he makes $1.5 million, and he makes a lot of money, working 24 hours a week. And it starts by his purpose. His purpose is, I want to be a hero to people who appreciate their health. And those people who appreciate their health love him, because he is so dedicated to the idea of, that health, and, helping you be healthier and healthier, and the attention to detail, all the things he studies, all the things he does. So a lot of times he never have to convince patients, oh, here, this is the treatment, and it's going to cost you 10. No, they are like, please help me. They are telling him, I did a lot of thinking, and I've been doing a lot of research, and you are the person for me. Help me, improve my health, because that's who you are. So he sees 1 to 6 patients a day, and he really spends the time with them, and they really appreciate him. It's all cash, fee for service. And the people who work for him, they're not there to do a job. They're not just, oh yeah, he's paying me so much and I'm here because I get a paycheck. They also believe in what he believes in about improving health and the overall health through dentistry. So it's almost like the success he has and the lifestyle he has is a byproduct of his commitment to that vision or that mission, and his team's commitment to that vision or the mission. Yes, he's very successful. Yes, he works a lot less than most of the dentists. Yes, he's very successful, but those were not what he went after. He went after who does he want to be, and what kind of a practice he wants to run, and then he started chipping away at it. Of course, it took him 20 years to get there, but the point is, I think the idea that number, like you said, money will come, success will come, but if you're only focused on it without focusing on why are you doing what you're doing, inspiring your people around it, it usually won't come. So it's almost like the less you focus on success and the more you focus on, going deep and figuring out why are you doing what you do. And I loved what you told me when we first started this conversation. You said being a mom is my calling. That's like by far the number one thing. And of course, like those of us who haven't struggled having children don't appreciate children as much as somebody who had to really work for it, right? Mm-hmm. But when you have it, you do such an amazing job. Your kids will never forget it. You won't forget it. And it changes everything. So it's amazing. Anyways, I'm rambling on, but so I would love to hear your thoughts on how you what is an amazing dental team that you have looked at. What are the attributes? Because I think a lot of times when people hear examples and stories, I think they really can visualize it.
Sure. Well, I think the one thing when you were describing to me your dentist and the and your experience when you're there, it just brings to mind one word to me, and that's clarity. When we have clarity, it's amazing what we can accomplish. So taking the example of a great dental team, having that clarity of their expectation and their role and responsibility, because it's one thing for me to say something very grandiose, but I know dentists like to think, okay, now how do I make that happen? What are the steps in order in a linear fashion for me to do that? And I like to make things real because I just don't want to say certain key phrases or buzzwords that everybody's talking about, because I want to give them actionable items, because that's really where the meat's going to be for them. Right. And having clarity for the role and responsibility of each team member in your practice, you've got to think about that, because you're dealing with other people, and this is where communication is really, really, really important. They need to understand what they're expected to do, but they also need to understand that they're accountable to the dentist and also to the rest of the team, which means the entire team has to understand every process and system in the office and how they relate to it. That's a simple way of saying it, because think about from a visual standpoint, Naren, dominoes. If one domino falls, it's going to affect everything else, right? Same thing in a dental practice. If they have a horrible experience at the front desk and they get to the assistant and she's fantastic and the hygienist is fantastic and everybody else is great, what is that patient going to walk away from? They didn't like the experience that they had at the front desk. So everybody has to have that clarity and know what is their expectation for the whole patient experience from beginning to end. And I think that's where we lose sight of the patient at times, because sometimes we think the tasks are so important. I'm a big believer in, if you put the patient first, then everything else is going to fall in line, because that's who you need to make happy. And now I'm not saying don't take care of your team and the patient's always right, because actually I don't always believe that. Every situation is unique and different. But the experience of what the patient has in your office, that's really what I'm talking about. And those great dental teams really come from understanding the clarity of the doctor and what they are trying to accomplish in their practice. And clarity is, to me, the number one thing, and communication is the second, because they both work hand in hand for everybody on the team to understand really what the ultimate goal is.
Right. It's kind of funny. You reminded me of something. Yeah, I mean, the person answering the phone, if that person is really have a smile on his or face when he or she is answering the phone, and really welcoming and really helpful, the person who's making that phone call, is going to be happy and would want to engage that person, right? If the person says, "Oh, my job is to answer the phone and take these notes," I'm just going through my motions of doing the task, it's not the same thing. So what you're saying is every person has a role to play, like in a basketball team. Somebody's defending, somebody's rebounding, etc., etc. And I'm not an expert in basketball, but so everybody has to have clarity in terms of what their role is in conjunction or in relation to the overall purpose of what does the customer want or what does the patient want and how do we provide it. In our own way, not the way the next door neighbor is doing it. I mean, the dentist across the street is doing it, but for us. Making sense?
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer. I'm not one of those coaches or consultants that say, okay, this is my system and this is what we're going to do. I approach every client from a custom standpoint because every practice, in my mind and in my opinion, every practice is unique and every situation is unique. Why in the world would I want to be cookie cutter and talking to everybody the exact same way? Because that's just not going to work. And when I talk with potential clients, especially, I need to make sure that I align with what they're looking for and how I can help them. Because if I've learned one time, I think all it takes is that one bad situation. And I think the situation could have gone better because I didn't ask the right questions. And I spend so much time with potential clients before we decide that we want to work together to eliminate that, that frustration for them and that frustration for me. It's both of us for both parties. But I think clarity and communication cannot be overstated.
Absolutely, because if you have the wrong map or you don't have clarity, you're going to get lost. Doesn't matter how hard you work.
Yep. And it reminds me of something I was telling a friend the other day. I think words really do matter. And when we sit back and when we're very intentional in what we say to people, instead of just spouting off and just saying different things, for me, it's a personal thing. I hate the word train. I think we teach people and we train dogs. Right. And I know that's just always bothered me. Every time I hear somebody say, we're going to train this, no, we teach people and we train animals, but we teach people. And that's really what it's about, because having that clarity on the team and teaching them what we want to take place. And every day is not perfect. I'm not telling you the best teams out there that they get it right 100% of the time, and because they don't. I mean, we can see that in sports, we can see that in dental practices, we can see that in life. But having that intentional mindset every day of saying, this is what we want to accomplish. We're going to work together for the same goal, to be able to take care of the patient, to make sure they get the treatment that they need, to make sure that they have great oral health, to make sure that we give them different financial, different things to choose from, whether it's care credit or other things for them to be able to get the treatment that they need. It's almost like we are the information gatherers. We give our patients everything they need for them to be able to say yes and to be taken care of.
Right. I was going to ask you, in terms of, we talked about clarity, we talked about, being very intentional, starting with the dentist and then each team member, and how does everyone work together. What are some of the things you have noticed? What else have you noticed that you feel are critical to create that great teamwork?
I think it's great on the front end to have everything we've already talked about, like we said, the clarity and the understanding of the goal. I think the number one thing that's going to separate the good teams from the great teams are those dentists that embrace their role as leaders and as coaches of their teams, and to be able to build that culture where everybody is accountable, not only to them as the dentist, but also to the rest of the team. And that one part is very crucial to be successful, every day, year over year. Because if you don't have that accountability piece, then really you're just preaching with no results. You're just talking. Because it's very important for everybody to understand, okay, if for some reason, say somebody on the team is just having a bad day, and that's life. We all have good days, bad days, and in between. But if somebody's having a bad day, we need to check that at the door and be ready to be on for our patients. And I'm not trying to create a false sense of self, but you have to be there present in the moment to be able to take care of your patients. So if for some reason somebody is not able to handle things like they normally would, I think the rest of the team needs to say, hey, snap out of it here. Let's get back on track and let's make this happen, and be encouraging to one another. There are different team aspects that in the dental practice we certainly need to do. Sometimes you just need to hear, hey, it's going to be okay. We can talk about this at lunch, but right now let's do what we need to do, and we'll figure out what needs to happen. If it's, somebody got in a fight with their boyfriend, or they got in an argument with their spouse, or whatever the case may be. And those are life things that happen daily, or somebody's kid made them mad. I mean, that happens, right? So, but we can't let our patients know that. They don't need to see that part. But as a team, it's almost like if you're a true team, it's almost like that is your work family, because a true team is going to have that caring and concern, and it takes time to build that rapport. It's not instant. And it's definitely intentional. Every day is intentional. So I would say, really, really long answer to your question is that accountability and having that sense within the team, because that is crucial to be able to have success.
Yeah, I love what you said. So the great teams versus the good teams. Great teams, the dentist sees and embraces and grows in his role as the leader and the coach, right? I mean, if you think about a football game, or any game for that matter, coach is not on the field. He cannot tell these players, oh, go left, go right, do this, do that. He has to trust them and rely on them that they are going to play the game based on the circumstances at that very moment, because they trust each other, they depend on each other, they anticipate each other, they are there for each other, right? Like the person is having a bad day, you don't just arguing about it or talking about it or making it's not going to help anybody, right? So that creating that trust, creating that comfort level where people understand, appreciate, and leverage each other's strengths. And that's hard because, like you said, most dentists are busy doing what they learned in school, which is the clinical side. But all the clinical stuff, without this amazing teamwork which comes from a great coach/leader, it's useless. Because at the end of the day, there's a human at the other end, and that human is not a piece of paper or a box. It's a human with feelings, thoughts, everything else, right? And if that human, who's your patient, doesn't feel cared for, doesn't feel taken care of, he's not going to come back. He's not going to say nice things. He's not going to, accept treatment. So it's like an uphill battle, and you are just going after numbers for the sake of numbers without getting anywhere. So it's amazing that mindset shift from being a dentist to being a coach/leader. I can see why you feel that's critical. That's what differentiates the great teams from the okay teams.
And going back to what you said with the football analogy, it could be any sport. All of that you're talking about, for a coach to be able to have their team, whether it be on the court, on the field, whatever the sport is, and to know that they can react to certain things, all of that takes place with what the coach does with the team during practice. And that's when those moments, I mean, I know I can tell you, I can either hold my hand up for all of my teams and do a signal, or I can yell one word and we're going to change our defense, because it's that instantaneous, because I've taught them, or as most coaches, you put your team in a position to win, that you need to be adaptable and change at a moment's notice. Same thing in the dental world. And I find that if I can get my clients to understand, or the audience when I'm speaking, to be able to understand that sports analogy, it's amazing how all of this other stuff, it actually means something. And I love coaching basketball, but when I coach girls that age, what I'm really doing is teaching them life skills. that's why I love it so much. I mean, I love basketball, and Naren, if we ever meet face to face and we're watching a game, I'm going to be the one screaming and hitting things, because I'm very passionate about it. I think you can tell when talking to me, and anybody who's ever seen me during a sporting event knows that about me, and they're forewarned. I'm going to be into it. I'm going to be in the moment. But for a dental team, it's not all about screaming and up and down and cheering for the team. How do we break that down? What do we do to have a good practice? Because that's what we're really talking about. It's preparation. It's knowing what we need to do when we need to do it. And it is completely related to the clarity. So, I know I've said a lot of different words while we've been talking together, but I think everybody can understand what you and I have been talking about with being able to lay it out with teams and being able to talk to dentists. And I think as a coach, as the coach dentist, the leader dentist, it's a different perspective. I don't know of a lot of anybody else talking about it from this perspective. And I love that opportunity to talk to dentists about that, because they truly understand at that moment. It's like, I love seeing the light bulb go off, and I know it when it happens. I can see their faces all the time, and they get it. Once they get it, they've got it. But then it's, how do I do that in my practice? And that's what I love helping practices with.
Absolutely. I would love to talk to you for another 1 hour, but we do need to
Sure.
wrap up. So let me ask you this. How can somebody learn more about this mindset, and how can they go from being this clinician to being this coach, slash leader? Can they get in touch with you, or how do you typically engage people or help dentists?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you some 3 different ways to get in touch with me. You can get in touch with me by going on my website, which is victorydentalmanagement.com. You can send me an email at victorydentalmanagement@verizon.net. Or if you want to chat, you can give me a call at 804-399-2053.
Right. 804-399-2053, and there's no agenda. They just can come with their challenges and talk to you, and you can, really understand and help them. Is that how you do it? What happens when they call you?
Yep. When they call me, we typically, and I do a free complimentary session with me anyway, to be able to see if there's something that I can help them with, because like I said before, I need to make sure that I can help them and they like me. It's a two-way street. We got to be able to make sure we're all on the same page. So it's a conversation that we have, and I'd love to be able to help. I think in this world, we don't pay it forward enough. And I think in dentistry, that's one area I absolutely love working in this field, because ultimately I'm here to help. And I realize, especially over the years, I have a very high degree of wanting to help other people. So I love doing that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So they can just call you and openly talk to you about their challenges, and if you can help them, and if they want you to help them, then you guys engage. If not, no harm, no foul. So that's great.
Absolutely. I'd look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate this, Lynne, for taking the time, and hopefully we can do this again sometime, and maybe get into another part of teamwork. I know teamwork is a huge word, and there's so many details and so many pieces to it. But I loved what you shared with us. You talked about clarity. You talked about, the vision and who do you want, what kind of practice do you want, and what kind of an experience do you want. You talked about the mindset shift from, I am a clinician to I am a coach/leader. Of course, you're still a clinician, but without the coach-leader part, it's not as effective, right? And so this is awesome. I really, really got so much out of this today, and I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, absolutely. The pleasure's been mine, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. Once again, thank you for listening to Lynne on Growing Dentist podcast show, and have a wonderful day.